Welcome to Weekly Digest, where we highlight the work of ministers of government as they push the administration's development agenda, picking up from where we left off last week. Minister within the Ministry of Public Works, the Honourable Deodat Indar, says the establishment and expansion of businesses are testament of the enabling environment for investors created by the government. Minister Indar spoke last Saturday at the opening of a new branch of Chicken and Burger Delight at Lenora, West Coast, Demerara.
I want to finally thank the Turan family for having confidence in the economy to invest, and I have seen that the wider private sector is also having that level of confidence to invest and to broaden their presence in Guyana and to spread their wings. We as government, we stand with you. Once businesses invest, we work with businesses to make sure they are successful. That is government's role, to create the environment so that businesses can be successful.
Residents along flooded sections of the Maikoni Branch Road can expect greater relief from the National Drainage and Irrigation Authority. This assurance was given by Minister of Agriculture, the Honourable Zulfikar Mustafa, during his fourth visit to the area on Saturday last.
What we have decided, because we wanted to do this a long time ago, but residents didn't agree with us, to impose a certain block impoldament and pump the water out. So now they have decided that they will agree at that position, and from tomorrow, Mr. Lionel Wordsworth and his team will start that exercise. So hopefully by the mid next week, this area can be drained out and the residents will not be underwater.
Minister of Amerindian Affairs, the Honourable Pauline Sukai, has urged residents of Itabaca Region 8 to consider their own food security and start by increasing their agricultural production to cater for disasters like the flooding experienced recently. The minister encouraged the community to start storing farine for rainy days.
You should begin to plant more than you are doing and to stockpile food for disaster. You can't only live for today and live for 1 month and live for 2 months. You have to plan well to ensure that your food security is going to be something that you do not have to be at risk in a disaster.
While there, the minister also delivered 20 food hampers to flood-affected persons. Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, the Honourable Mohaber Anil Nandlal, on Sunday last delivered 200 food and sanitation hampers to the flood-affected villages of Maraikabai along the Maikoni River, Region 5.
You would have read in the newspapers that our president declared the flooding a natural disaster. By so doing, we have qualified ourselves to be the recipient of international aid. And that will come and you will get even more support.
Moving on to Monday, Minister of Amerindian Affairs, the Honourable Pauline Sukai, delivered 2 sewing machines and a chainsaw to the village of Chianmouth, Region 8, to aid in the village's development. The equipment is worth over $500,000.
Mostly women tend to be the ones who gravitate towards sewing, but that is stereotyping the activity. The machines are available for anyone who has the interest in learning to sew. It could be male or female, young and old. But of course, you have to have some lead persons who will be able to manage the use.
Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, the Honourable Mohaber Anil Nandlal, has been elected chair of the Parliamentary Select Committee to look at the removal of jail time for possession of small amounts of marijuana. The committee will look at government's marijuana bill, which seeks to replace the custodial sentences with mandatory counselling and community service. On Monday, the Attorney General met members of the Rastafarian community who were protesting outside of his chambers for the immediate suspension of jail sentences for small amounts of marijuana.
We can't impose a law on the people without an input from the people, because the law will not be obeyed. As a result, we have decided to take the bill to a special select committee.
He said now that the chairman has been elected, groups like the Rastafarian community and the general public will be invited to make representation. The committee comprises 3 government and 3 opposition members. Some $37.5 million in subventions was on Monday allocated to 15 Region 4 Neighborhood Democratic Councils, NDC, to advance services within the various districts. As he presented the checks, Minister of Local Government and Regional Development, the Honourable Nigel Darnell, told the NDCs that residents need to be aware and involved in the interventions undertaken by the village offices.
So that they can help us to get the resources that we put into these villages spent wisely, and so that we uphold the values that we pursue as part of our good governance.
Minister Darnell says it is now the NDC's responsibility to aggressively address all issues, especially those that are priority. The industry Plaisance, Better Hope, Golden Grove, Cane Grove and Buxton were among the NDCs that received checks. Meanwhile, $88 million in subventions was allocated to 10 neighborhood democratic councils in Region 5 and 18 in Region 6.
I'm going to tell you this without fear of contradiction. If overseers are not going to be pulling their weight, we are going to take action against them. They are responsible for the management of the NDCs. They are responsible for the resources of the NDCs.
Minister Darnell says NDCs must put politics and discrimination aside and build relationships with their respective communities. He urged that they create a mechanism to address issues professionally and to treat residents with respect. Minister of Health, the Honourable Dr. Frank Anthony, says no person who has been administered the first dose of the Sputnik V vaccine has passed the stipulated 12 weeks time frame for the second dose. During Tuesday's COVID-19 update, Minister Anthony said the period has not expired yet.
After your first dose, your efficacy is generally about 79% after a single dose. And when you get that booster shot, in between the 4 weeks to 12 weeks, when you get that booster shot, it goes up to about 97%. So even without the booster shot, if you get a single dose of Sputnik, the first dose of Sputnik, you will still be protected.
Minister Anthony said a study published by the government of Argentina shows the efficacy of the Sputnik V vaccine is very high, even in the single dose. Minister of Agriculture, the Honourable Zulfikar Mustafa, has commended the fisherfolks for the roles they play in Guyana's agricultural sector, contributing largely to the economy. On Tuesday, the minister addressed representatives of the sector as they commemorated National Fisherfolk Day 2021.
The agriculture sector has played a central role in Guyana's economy, and fisheries contribute significantly to this. Fisheries contributes 3% to our agriculture GDP and $11.3 billion to Guyana's export, which represented about 6% of Guyana's total export.
Minister Mustafa said even in 2021, the challenges of the fisheries sector continue and are now further compounded by the impact of climate change. He noted, though, that the Fisheries Department of the Ministry of Agriculture continues to work to ensure that the sector remains viable and sustainable. The Chedi Jagan International Airport expansion project has progressed significantly in the last few months. Minister of Public Works, the Honourable Bishop Wan Edgell, recently met with China Harbour Engineering Company for an update on the project. The minister noted that the administration's intervention has yielded much results.
All of the 71 critical items that needed to be fixed, which was making us very uncomfortable about, all 71 have been fixed.
Minister Edgell says the company is well on its way to completing several items that form part of a master tracking list, which were included in the original contract. Additionally, the minister says CJIA is gearing to have full use of the new runway. On Tuesday, Minister of Local Government and Regional Development, the Honourable Nigel Darmlal, met farmers who were reissued land they were removed from by the former Region 5 Regional Executive Officer. The minister's engagement with the farmers was a directive given by His Excellency President Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali.
A few years ago, the last government took possession of, I think, nearly 50 acres of land. Right in this area, and repossessed it without any due regard to your livelihood. So we are very happy that the court ruled in your favor.
During an inspection of the land, Minister Darmlal urged the farmers to work along with the Regional Democratic Council for a better outcome for themselves and their community. Prime Minister the Honourable Brigadier Retired Mark Phillips says the preliminary report on Guyana's flood disaster submitted on Wednesday by the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, SDEMA, is a major step towards the country's overall successful recovery. The team met with the Prime Minister, the Civil Defence Commission, and a number of government ministers whose sectors were impacted by the recent floods.
My understanding is that after this phase, there are two other steps that we will commission, and that will help us to plan our recovery from the floods. As you know, recovery, in a sense, is getting the whole development process back on the road, so to speak, in terms of infrastructure development, getting the livelihood of the people who are affected by the flooding back on stream, the farms that were affected, and, this will now help us to determine the inputs from all the sectors.
This preliminary assessment, called the Dana Continuum, is a data-gathering process which will be preceded by a final assessment towards ultimate recovery. Minister of Amerindian Affairs, the Honourable Pauline Sukai, on Wednesday delivered 50 food hampers to those persons affected by recent flooding in Block 42, Amelia's Ward, Region 10.
Due to the prolonged rainfall and Block 42 self-help scheme, Region 10 has been affected with respect to their farms being affected. So our government has put together hampers as their first response to ensure that those affected have some, sustenance over the period. So today's exercise is to provide to the residents and households of Block 42 self-help scheme some food hampers.
Minister Sukai said the Dr. Mohamed Irfan Ali government will continue to support persons affected by the countrywide flooding. The government has launched a nationwide campaign to provide hampers to flood-affected persons to buttress the effects posed by the floods. The Ministry of Health has started distribution of the purchased 88,000 Sinopharm vaccines it received on Wednesday morning from the People's Republic of China. Health Minister the Honourable Dr. Frank Anthony made the disclosure during Thursday's COVID-19 update.
We have started the distribution of those that we have received, so we're sending them out to the region. And one of the advantages with this particular vaccine is it does not require the ultra cold storage or the really cold storage, which is -20. These are vaccines that can be stored from 2 to 8, so we are very happy with that because it allows us to move them to very remote places as well.
The Ministry of Housing and Water hosted its second Dream Realised housing initiative in Region 2, where 355 residents received house lots in Buxton St. Joseph and Charity Housing Scheme. During the opening at the Anna Regina Municipality compound, Minister the Honourable Colin Crowell said the house lots are heavily subsidised. He noted that the development cost for the Buxton St. Joseph scheme is $872 million.
We are speaking about investments that will be on our priority program for 2022 of over $3.2 billion here in Region 2 for 2 housing areas. Lots also will be allocated for residential, industrial, commercial, and even for religious purposes. Of course, the areas will include community facilities, and public open spaces. Additionally, as part of our commitment to making access to housing for all our citizens, members of our disciplinary service will also have an opportunity to be allocated house lots.
The government plans on creating 10,000 house lots annually or 50,000 house lots in 5 years. On Friday, Minister of Health, the Honourable Dr. Frank Anthony, said children were now contracting the severe forms of COVID-19. He made the disclosure during the daily COVID-19 update.
Over the last 2 weeks or so, we have seen a disturbing trend. And right now, in our hospitals, we have 4 children who have been severely affected by COVID. And so we are monitoring them, and hopefully the prognosis would be good because the medical team is really working to ensure that they can provide the best care for these children.
Since March 2020, 1,567 children have been diagnosed with COVID-19.
It's time that we pay some attention to this, especially now that we are seeing not just the mild cases in children, but we are seeing more severe forms of COVID among the children population. So I just want people to be, careful with their children and take all the necessary precautions.
The health minister has urged parents to ensure that children observe the COVID-19 protocols of frequent hand washing, masking when in public, and practicing physical distancing to reduce their chances of contracting the disease. Over 5,400 households in Region 6 East Berbice Quarantine are expected to receive about $136 million through the second phase of the government's $25,000 per household COVID-19 relief cash grant. Minister of Local Government and Regional Development, the Honourable Nigel Darmlal, told the DPI the distribution process, which recently began in the region, is moving smoothly.
The government of Guyana, as we had committed, provided relief to those who were affected by COVID, the COVID cash grant. His Excellency the President launched that program last year. Thousands of households benefited. I think close to $7 billion in the first phase.
Minister within the Ministry of Housing and Water, the Honourable Susan Rodriguez, on Saturday emphasised the importance the PPPC government places on the development, safety and protection of women and girls. Speaking at the opening of the Women's Safety Audit Workshop hosted to create safe space for women through adequate housing, the minister said the findings of the 2-day workshop will help to guide infrastructure design and construction of community facilities in the areas that fall under the Adequate Housing and Urban Accessibility Program.
So the Women's Safety Audit is done to assess the safety of a particular space, of a particular area. And it ensures that the project considers the needs of women and how the intervention, including the community facilities, can better cater for the needs of women and for their safety. I want to assure you of government's support for women, for children, for vulnerable groups in our country.
Minister Rodriguez says through this initiative and others to follow, women will be empowered.
Now, it also helps to build a local ownership where women and other members of the community can feel a sense of belonging. You taking ownership in shaping the way your community develops.
10 persons are currently participating in the workshop held at De La Parfait Harmony Primary School, West Bank, Demerara. That's it for this edition of Weekly Digest. For these and other government-related information, do log on to our website, dpi.gov.gy, and our social media platforms as well. Goodbye.